friends, all of our viewers, those listening via the World Wide Web. We welcome you to another edition of Marriage Encounter. We're delighted to be with you and trust that you are doing well, that your marriages are doing well. We are here to provide useful information on building solid, strong marital relationships. With me, Dr. Greene, is Dr. Braithwaite. Welcome, Dr.
Good day, Dr. Greene. Good day, friends. We are always very excited to be on with you. Looking forward to our discussion today. And particularly today, I am overjoyed to share, Dr. Greene, that during the course of next week, that would be from the 12th of March, we have a very special parenting seminar for all of our parents out there. This special parenting seminar will be taking place at the St. John's Seventh-day Adventist Church on Nevis Street. It is free and open to all and sundry, whether you're from Willie Keys or you're from Bowlands or you're from the city of St. John's or any of the surrounding areas or just wherever you're from in Antigua and Barbuda. We are inviting you to join us for a very powerful parenting seminar. It's going to be free, and our facilitator, Dr. Judith Josiah Martin, who currently serves as a lecturer at the University of Maine in the United States, will be our chief presenter. And so we're looking forward to a wonderful time, Doc. I think it's going to be enlightening as we look at some areas, including, how some of our early childhood experiences and maybe even early childhood trauma impacts the way that we actually parent our own children.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. There are all kinds of interconnectedness with respect to childhood, adulthood.
That's correct.
And so if you are out there, if you're on Antigua, you need to make use of this opportunity. And I believe you're also going to St. Kitts later.
Absolutely. So I was just going to remark and continue by saying that St. Kitts is not going to be left out. And so we will be on St. Kitts on the 15th and 16th of March, which is the Wednesday and Thursday of next week. We'll be doing a lot more over there as well. And just looking forward to an exceptional time. I have some friends who have reached out and indicated that they want to be a part of it and, want to interview our presenter and so on. So it's going to be an exceptional seminar. It's, as I said, it's free of charge, and we invite everybody to participate. So for Antigua and Barbuda, as we mentioned, it is the St. John's Seventh-day Adventist Church, 7 p.m. On Sunday, the 12th of March, Monday, the 13th of March, and also Tuesday, the 14th of March. Those are our times, and you can just drop by at your convenience and be a part of this amazing seminar.
Indeed. Well, we are going to go back to the issues that we have been discussing here on Marriage Encounter.
Yes.
Last week, we got into some pretty important stuff, Dr. Braithwaite. We were talking about values, and we were talking about the value of honesty. And last week, we explored some areas, or some additional areas, I should say, because we started a week before, that some individuals have a challenge with. I want to read a quotation before we move on. There's a quotation from Cloud & Townsend that says, "We can't stress enough the importance of being able to share with each other your deepest feelings, needs, hurts, desires, failures, or whatever else is in your soul." This matter of being able to be real with your spouse. It goes on. If you and your spouse can feel safe enough in your marriage to be totally vulnerable, then once again, your marriage can return to a state of paradise.
Wow.
So we're saying here that the matter of being vulnerable with your spouse is a good thing.
Yes, it is. It is. And that's the essence, I think, Pastor, of relationships. And, I can't help but, we always talk about it. And I love the way that you express it. It's about intimacy. And as you like to say, it's intimacy, and that vulnerability, if you are unable to be vulnerable, I think it creates a wall. for the other person to be able to really see into you. I mean, Doc, you know how it is. If there's a wall in your yard, it sort of prevents you from seeing clearly to the other side. And you don't want that in a relationship. In your relationship, you want to be completely vulnerable. You want to be open. You want to be able to create that space for intimacy. So vulnerability is a critical component for successful marriages.
We are going to be talking about fear today, Doc. And I want to go back to what happened in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Because, Scripture tells us that when Adam and Eve were created, they were both naked and unashamed.
Yes.
They had no hidden agendas. There was nothing that they felt that they needed to protect in secrecy from the other.
Right.
They were totally open, totally transparent.
Yes.
And that's where we want to be in our relationships. But when sin came, one of the first things Adam and Eve did was that they picked fig leaves and hid themselves. The fear began to take over. And ever since, we have been afraid of showing our true selves. Well, what we're saying is that we can understand how that functions in society, but with your spouse, you ought to be totally transparent. And as we say, you ought to be so transparent that your partner can peep into your soul, into me see. Cloud and Townsend said that true intimacy is the closest thing to heaven we can know. I mean, you're talking about getting really real with your partner, knowing your partner. When I pretend to be somebody else, when I hide, because last week we were talking about deception and how destructive that can be, but when I hide information from my partner, when I don't let them know what is bothering me, when I pretend to be somebody else, then my spouse can't really love me, because what she sees and understands is not real.
That's right.
So we ought to be real.
We ought to be real.
And that's the point.
And you mentioned in passing earlier, the whole idea of well, we are discussing fear, all right? And so, some people, and as we've mentioned last week, some people are fearful of showing their true selves, for several different reasons. They're fearful of being vulnerable because they fear possibly that the person will not accept them for who they are. But that reality creates that dynamic of a block. You're unable to really enter into the soul of the other person. You're unable to enter into their experience in a true and real way. And so, it's just really for us to examine. Each person has to examine to determine, do I really want to have an intimate relationship in our experience?
Yeah, Doc, I think some people would say what is hindering me from doing that is that if my spouse finds out such a thing that I have done, then that might lead to something else. And so it's interesting. Sometimes people are deceptive, not because they want to be deceptive, but because they are afraid of being found out.
Correct.
There are a few interesting points that we want to look at. So some people are seeking to protect themselves. Maybe that's what I should say. And so here are some common fears. Fear of real closeness and being known. I can be afraid that if my spouse finds out who I really am, my spouse might not like me.
Right. So that's the fear of being known, for who you really are. Again, some people have fears of simply, maybe there's a problem that they have, some problem. I remember one individual had an issue with an eye, and they just didn't want anybody to know. It wasn't something that you could see. It was something that was going on internally, and they didn't want anybody to know because for some reason they felt that I would be less than. The person may want not to be my friend because of this problem that I have. And so we hide from that that aspect of being totally known. And that also, we also mentioned, Doc, in that relationship, the issue of fear of closeness. You know, some people are afraid of getting close. They're afraid that the person will know too much or will be able to understand them more than they want to be understood. You know, those are interestingly real fears that people have.
But if I take that example, Doc, so something is wrong with my eye. If I'm not seeing from my right eye, and I don't want you to know, I mean, it really doesn't make me less a person if you know or not.
Right, right.
But I could excuse that.
Right.
But why would I not want my spouse to know?
Right.
You know, and that's the challenge. We're talking about a marital relationship, husband and wife. And you may pretend because you want your spouse to boast that you're such a great guy and you're so powerful, and you keep that secret. One of these days, she's going to find out.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. And you know, and again, that sort of creates a barrier or a wall to closeness, because the person is going to feel, but I mean, I'm your spouse. Why couldn't you have said to me, you understand, that you were going through this situation or you had this reality happening in your life? You know, I'm here for you.
But I mean, in addition, she may have been able to provide the kind of nurturing help that he
And
really
support.
needed.
Yeah,
And maybe if he had spoken up and declared himself, the problem could have been solved before it got too late.
As bad as it was,
Yeah.
exactly. So, you know, these again are some realities that we face. Persons have those common fears, closeness and being known. Another one, Doc, is fear of abandonment and loss of love if they are known. And we sort of touched on it, but yes.
Yeah, because, you know, sometimes, let's say we have a pass, you know, and we hide it. We don't tell our spouse anything because we feel that it's just a terrible pass. You know, we like to say that you have to get real clean, real honest before you get married.
Right, right.
Do the probing, the digging, etc., because you're going to spend the rest of your life with your spouse. And it really is not a good thing when your spouse is finding out
little bits and
very
pieces.
important information after you get married.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to wake up one morning and my spouse say, you know, this has been bothering me all along. You know, I'm a murderer.
That would be
You know,
serious.
that would be serious.
That would be very serious, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there's so many other illustrations, you know, in terms of serious things. I mean, you get married to somebody and then you find out that they have a $400,000 loan somewhere that, you know, they never told you about because they felt like if I told you, you might not want to marry me. And the thing is, you know, you need to give your spouse that opportunity to know you and to make a choice. Otherwise, it's unfair.
But here's what we're saying now. Let's assume that you had this loan that you took and you didn't tell your spouse. Maybe a friend of yours was in trouble and you decided to help them out with a promise that they were going to repay.
Right.
Let's just call it $25,000, right? Yeah, let's not say $400,000.
Sure.
You know, but then the bank is now beginning to call you because your friend is not making the payments and you are the one responsible. Do you hide that from your spouse or do you come clean?
Well, I mean, that's the point, because some people would attempt to hide it, obviously, because, you know, monies have to come out of your salary or wherever you are, you know, in order to address that reality. Or, as you indicated, the bank may be calling. You would not always be home. You may not be in a position to take a call. You may ask your wife to answer your phone, and then it's the bank calling, you know. And so it's going to come out. And so the point is, why wouldn't you share it? And then the other question is, you know, what is really the embarrassment in that? I mean, you help somebody, there's a reality that you could not control, and now you have to address it. Why not share that with your spouse?
You know, I think it's important to recognize your error. To begin with, you should have discussed with your spouse before you made a decision like that. I want to make that point, Doc.
Yeah. Well,
because
well, go ahead, yes.
you really should not be entering into a financial arrangement with somebody else without the knowledge of your spouse.
Correct.
Should I say without the knowledge and blessing of your spouse?
Yes.
So you made that blunder, but the reality is you are in it, come clean.
Right.
Because here's what's going to happen. If you hide this, and as you said, you know, maybe the bank is calling and now you're asking your spouse to answer, and your spouse is going to want to know, why must I take your call?
Right.
You know, and so then one thing leads to another. So come clean, swallow the pride, get clean, and make a promise and a commitment that moving forward, you're going to do the right thing.
Correct. And I mean, in terms of that response, and then the illustration, you may have even had that loan before you got married, and we're just saying that it would be wise during your dating, courting, whatever, to share that information, because once you get married, it becomes the responsibility of a couple to handle financial matters. And so, that is interesting. I know somebody's out there saying, Pastor, whatever financial demands they have before marriage is theirs. When they get married, they have to take care of it. But the reality is that in a marriage, you're supposed to bring all things together.
When we're talking about fears, Doc, but I do need to say that when we talk about finances, it's always a challenging area. Money is one of those big things in marriage.
Yes.
But you must recognize that a marriage is what it says it is. A marriage, a coming together, a union where you have all things in common. And if we are talking about transparency, we're talking about intimacy, we're talking about being vulnerable, you are going to have to learn. And for some people, it may be a challenge because you're not accustomed to this, but you're going to have to learn to begin to open up and to share with your spouse. The reality is, that's how God made us. He wants us to be able to share, to relate, and you're going to find life a whole lot easier when you can be real, be your real self. Let your spouse know this thing is bothering you. This is a concern of mine. Right. And when you can have that open communion with your spouse, communication, dialogue with your spouse, knowing that your spouse is there for you, it's just such a wonderful feeling. Just so comforting that you may be having stress on your job, but you can go home to a spouse and find comfort in his or her presence.
Yeah, and again, I've made the point, but I want to make it again. For some people, vulnerability is very challenging to be able to express themselves in that way. And I want to say that it's something that you can learn to do. It's a learned behavior. It's something you can learn to do. It's something you can practice to do. It's something you can determine to do because you recognize that it's valuable for the relationship. It would be extremely difficult, Doc, as we've said over and over again, for a person to be in a relationship where the one spouse does not share, is unwilling to share emotions and feelings and their own concerns, likes and dislikes, because that's just how they've grown up. They've never been accustomed in the family of origin where they came from. Maybe you were a child who was sort of adopted by an aunt or a grandmother into another family. You didn't feel very comfortable, and so you just kind of kept to yourself. You learned to internalize. You learned simply to just deal with your own issues. All of the pain and all the hurt, you've learned to deal with it by yourself, and that's how you grew up. And now you've gotten older, you've allowed yourself to be in a relationship, but you still have that challenge. And I'm suggesting that it's something that you would have to acknowledge, recognize, and then work towards overcoming, because it will not augur well in a relationship where you are trying to build intimacy. The value of sharing is so crucial, so critical, in terms of allowing the other person to enter into your experience so that you can grow and so that you can build together. I think, learning to do that and recognizing if you have that challenge is important. Learning to share is even more critical.
Doc, I want to go back to the courtship period. I want to talk to those. I know we do have lots of folks who listen who are not yet married. And if you're involved in a relationship, you are seeing somebody, maybe you're planning to get married. This matter of being open with your spouse, getting to know who your spouse is important. Whoever is doing your premarital counseling, I hope you are doing premarital counseling, they need to spend some time on this. We need to learn to be assertive. We need to learn to be vulnerable. And I do understand that in the courtship period, you may be saying that, well, I'm not yet married, and in case so-and-so. But you ought to be able to look for some clues, cues. of whether or not your partner is willing to open up emotionally. That is very important. If I keep all my emotions to myself, then you don't get to know who I am.
Right.
And if what is going on inside of me stays there and I bottle it up and I leave it there, you will never get the opportunity to love the real me. And so you want to make sure that that is something you address, that is something you begin to work on even before you get married.
You know, and Doc, that brings me to something else which is really important because, you know, again, in our Western society, and there is a place for it, but we are hugely embrace the whole idea and notion of romantic love, right? Which is the lovey-feely kind of a Hollywood kind of a love. But love goes far beyond that. And we speak of it from the Christian perspective as it relates to 1 Corinthians 13, where we show the principles of love. And, you know, what's important here for us to understand that as you journey in your relationship, you will learn more things about your spouse, things that you didn't know. Some of the things, Pastor Doc, you may not even appreciate that much. I mean, it may be something that you like, wow, I mean, I just didn't know this. And, you know, it's not something that excites you. But the truth is, you are in a committed relationship. And that's what love does. The Bible says that love, it really keeps no record of wrongs. You know, love, that principle of love, it says that it seeks to cover the ills, the wrongs, the problems or the challenges that another person has. And so when we understand this, then we can appreciate that even though I may have some flaws and some shortcomings and some weaknesses, you know, in terms of my relationship, I should not be so afraid that I'm unwilling to be vulnerable to share with my spouse.
That's correct, because your spouse may have the skills to help you. You know, imagine that you're married and your spouse is a brilliant mathematician, right? But your spouse is pretending to be a brilliant English student, and your spouse doesn't have a good command of the English language, you know. But you do. Can you see? And maybe you, on the other hand, is a terrible mathematician. And do you see how you can complement each other?
Yeah.
You know, and work towards a harmonious whole.
Those values, yeah.
But if you pretend to be otherwise, you will embarrass yourself because you're going to get to the point where you're going to say the wrong thing. And your spouse may now be saying, but you know, you could have allowed me to do so and so.
To assist you, yeah.
So when I can say, listen, this is not my area. You know, you get it. You know, you sometimes some speakers get up to speak, Doc, and they're really nervous. And simply by saying, I'm really nervous. That just helps to calm them. You know, just being transparent enough to share, this is where I am right now. It just takes away all the pretense.
That's right.
And you get just this load off your shoulder and you can move forward.
You can be open, you can be clear. And, you know, again, let me just make this other point that, you know, we have to be humble enough, Doc. You know, we have to put down, as we call it, that foolish pride sometimes that causes us to think that for some reason I'm better than my spouse. You know, your spouse can share something with you. And just because of, you know, the fact that you have this attitude of pride, you don't feel like you can take counsel. You don't feel like you can be corrected, you know, because I am the man of the house, or I'm the one who makes the most money in this house. So, you know, all that I do is right. And it's such a damaging approach, because it doesn't provide, as you were sharing, the opportunity for you to complement each other in terms of your strengths and weaknesses.
I remember a few years ago when GT, who was the secretary of the General Conference, when he was retiring, after he gave his retirement speech, he said, as of this date, I have only one boss. And when they asked who was that one boss, he said, my wife. You know, here's my point. It is okay to be humble enough for you to accept correction from your spouse. You know, you should have that openness. That if I see my spouse doing something wrong, I feel empowered to be able to say, honey, that's not right, let's deal that. And vice versa. So, I mean, it's your spouse. You all are a team. We can't emphasize that enough. Doc, you like to say that if one loses, the marriage loses.
That's right.
We are a team. We are not competing against one another. We are working to strengthen the relationship.
Yes.
And wherever you lack, I must come in and do something, and vice versa. I can't always have it right. I'm human. I must realize that. You must realize that you're human and that you are going to make mistakes.
That's right.
And you have to own up to the mistakes.
That's right.
And admit that there are some things about you that are not so good.
Absolutely. Yep. Our time is quickly running.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing discussion. And I think that, as individuals, being able to overcome that fear of vulnerabilities is hugely important. I think relationships can benefit individuals can benefit in their relationships from being more vulnerable with each other, sharing, being open, and using that material and that information to build your relationship rather than to tear it down. I think that's very, very important.
And we have been saying, the context for all of this, Doc, is that some people go into the deceptive mode because they are seeking to protect themselves. They're seeking to look good in the eyes of their spouse.
Right.
And we are saying it does not make sense for you to lie to your spouse, for you to be dishonest to your spouse, to look good, to protect yourself, for whatever reason. Just come clean. Your spouse wants to love a real person.
Yes.
And when your spouse knows that this is who you are, that makes so many things so much better. I know this is how you are.
Yeah, this is you. I appreciate that. It's like you get to the point where you understand that the marriage is more than the feelings you had when you were dating. You recognize that it's the realities of your experience are far greater than the sum total of the emotions that you have and the butterflies that you have in your stomach. You recognize this is real life, and these are real issues, and we are real people. We're not on the television somewhere pretending. We are actually real people, and we can deal with these realities of life. But Doc, I know we're coming to an end, and just before we go, I need to say thank you to Sister Novalee for the advice that you gave me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much, and I hope that today has shown that I've responded to that. And secondly, I want to just give a quick shout out to Vashti and Gloria, who listen attentively each week. They're from Freeman's Village. So Vashti and Gloria, thanks for being on, for watching and for listening to our Marriage Encounter. We really appreciate you guys so much.
And to all the rest of you out there who listen, this is why we do it.
Yes,
because we want to share this information.
Yeah.
We would like to hear from you. I run into so many persons every now and then.
Yes.
I listen to Marriage Encounter. Sometimes I open my phone, I respond to a phone in a bank line. I don't go to the bank these days so much. in a supermarket line or something to that effect, and somebody says, "Wait, don't I know this voice?" But send us a note. Let us know that you are listening to Marriage Encounter and that it is meaningful to you. The mailing address is marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. marriageencounter@slcadventist.org.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. It was a joy sharing with you. We will continue this important discussion. We have some very meaningful tips to share along the line of honesty as we wrap up and move on to another value.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, keep focused, keep sweet, be real, be yourself, be vulnerable with your spouse, and may God bless you richly. Until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.